My name is Rebecca Chen, and I'm 30 years old. What happened at the Grand Manor restaurant last Thanksgiving is something that completely transformed my family's understanding of success, failure, and which daughter had actually been taking care of them all along. Picture this: my parents raising their champagne glasses in the elegant private dining room, declaring my younger brother Marcus the pride of our family, while I sat there invisible, as usual. But then the head waiter approached our table with a leather folder, cleared his throat, and said words that made the entire room fall into stunned silence. "Excuse me, Miss Chen, but we need your signature on the final arrangements for your family's dinner. Thank you again for choosing us for your special celebration." You see, that moment when 23 pairs of eyes turned to stare at me wasn't just awkward. It was the instant my family realized that their disappointment daughter had secretly arranged and paid for the entire Thanksgiving celebration they were using to praise someone else. The same daughter they'd overlooked for years while celebrating Marcus's achievements had just been revealed as the person who'd been quietly financing their lifestyle, without any acknowledgement or appreciation. Before we dive into this story, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy stories about family dynamics and the moment when hidden generosity meets public recognition. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. I love connecting with people who understand that sometimes the most powerful revelations happen when you least expect them. Let me take you back to the weeks leading up to that Thanksgiving dinner when I was secretly orchestrating what I thought would be a beautiful family celebration. My parents had been stressed about hosting duties, Mom's arthritis was making cooking difficult, and Dad's recent retirement had them worried about expenses for large gatherings. When they mentioned possibly skipping our traditional family Thanksgiving or scaling it way back, I couldn't let that happen. So I did what I'd been doing for years without them knowing. I solved their problems quietly and anonymously. I called the Grand Manor restaurant, booked their most elegant private dining room, arranged for a full traditional Thanksgiving feast with all our family's favorite dishes, and prepaid everything including gratuity. I told them to keep my name confidential until the end of the meal, presenting it as a surprise benefactor situation that I hoped would delight everyone. The irony was that while I was spending $4,200 on this surprise celebration, my parents were telling relatives how worried they were about my financial stability and career prospects. Thanksgiving morning, I received the call I'd been expecting from Mom. "Rebecca, wonderful news. A family friend who wants to remain anonymous has arranged for us to have Thanksgiving dinner at the Grand Manor restaurant. Isn't that incredible? Someone who cares about our family wanted to make sure we could all be together for the holiday." "That's amazing, Mom. What a generous gesture." "It really is. I just wish we knew who to thank. This kind of kindness is so rare these days." She paused, and I could hear the emotion in her voice. "I'm especially grateful because, honestly, we've been struggling a bit since your father retired. This takes so much pressure off us." The struggling part was news to me, but it explained some things I'd noticed. Dad mentioning skipping his usual golf club membership, Mom buying generic brands at the grocery store when she'd always been particular about quality. They'd been too proud to ask for help directly, but not too proud to accept anonymous generosity. What they didn't know was that I'd been their anonymous benefactor for much longer than just this dinner. Thanksgiving afternoon arrived with unusual November warmth, and I drove to the Grand Manor restaurant feeling excited about the surprise I'd arranged. The private dining room looked perfect: elegant fall decorations, a table set for 23 people, and a spectacular view of the restaurant's gardens. I'd specifically requested their most attentive service staff, because I wanted everything to be flawless for our family celebration. My extended family began arriving at 4 p.m. as scheduled: aunts, uncles, cousins, my grandparents, and of course, my parents and Marcus. The reactions were exactly what I'd hoped for: amazement at the beautiful setting, gratitude for the anonymous generosity, and excitement about celebrating together in such elegant surroundings. "This is incredible," Aunt Susan said, admiring the crystal glasses and fine china. "Whoever arranged this has exquisite taste, and it must have cost a fortune," Uncle David added, calculating the expense of hosting 23 people at one of the city's most upscale restaurants. "Our mysterious benefactor is incredibly generous." I watched my family enjoy the appetizers and settle into conversations, feeling satisfied that my surprise was creating the warm, grateful atmosphere I'd envisioned. For the first hour, everything was perfect, exactly the kind of memorable family gathering I'd wanted to provide. But then came the toasts. Dad stood up with his wineglass raised, commanding attention from everyone around the table. Before we begin our main course, I want to take a moment to talk about gratitude and family success. My stomach tightened slightly. I recognized this setup, Dad's traditional Thanksgiving speech where he'd highlight the family's achievements and set expectations for the coming year. This year has been particularly special because we get to celebrate Marcus's incredible accomplishments, Dad continued, his voice carrying that tone of paternal pride I'd heard directed at my brother countless times over the years. At just 28, Marcus has been promoted to senior analyst at Morrison Financial. He's purchased his first home, and he's built the kind of stable, respectable career that makes us incredibly proud. The table erupted in appreciative murmurs and applause. Marcus blushed appropriately, leaning back in his chair with the confident modesty that came from years of being celebrated. Marcus represents everything we could hope for in a son, Dad went on, his voice getting more emotional. He's responsible, ambitious, successful, and most importantly, he's found his place in the world. He's truly the pride of our family. The pride of our family. Those words hit me like a physical blow, especially sitting in the dining room I'd secretly arranged and paid for, while listening to my father declare my brother the family's source of pride. To Marcus, Dad raised his glass higher, our success story and our greatest achievement as parents. The table chorused, glasses clinking in celebration of the golden child, while I sat there, feeling completely invisible. But Dad wasn't finished. I also want to acknowledge that not everyone finds their path as clearly as Marcus has. Some family members are still searching for their direction in life, and that's okay too. We support everyone on their journey, even when that journey takes longer than we'd hoped. Everyone knew he was talking about me. The 30-year-old daughter who was still searching while her younger brother had everything figured out. The implied disappointment was subtle but unmistakable, made worse by the fact that we were sitting in a room I'd purchased for this very celebration. Rebecca works very hard, Mom added diplomatically, trying to soften Dad's indirect criticism. She's just chosen a more unconventional path. Unconventional path. That's how they described the consulting business I'd built from nothing into a 7-figure enterprise over the past 6 years. Marcus, to his credit, looked uncomfortable with the excessive praise, but he didn't redirect attention or acknowledge my contributions to anything. He just accepted the accolades gracefully while I sat there being described as the family member who was still trying to find herself. The main course arrived shortly after the toasts, and conversation shifted to lighter topics. Holiday plans, family gossip, stories about the grandchildren. I tried to enjoy the meal I'd arranged, focusing on my grandparents' happiness and my cousins' animated discussions about their lives. But I couldn't stop thinking about Dad's words. Still searching for direction, takes longer than we'd hoped, the pride of our family, referring to Marcus while I remained unmentioned and unacknowledged. What made it particularly painful was that I'd been supporting our family financially in ways they didn't even know about. 2 years earlier, when Dad's small investment portfolio had taken a hit, and they'd been worried about affording Mom's medical treatments, I'd anonymously paid her hospital bills through a charitable foundation I'd established. When their roof had needed emergency repairs last spring, I'd arranged for the work to be done and the bill sent to my business address. I'd been quietly subsidizing their comfort and security while they worried about my financial stability and career prospects. As dessert was being served, a selection of traditional pies and the restaurant's signature bread pudding, I found myself making a decision I hadn't planned. It was time for them to know who their mysterious benefactor really was, and it was time for me to stop accepting being treated as the family disappointment, while secretly being their primary financial support. If you've ever been overlooked by family while secretly supporting them, type hidden strength in the comments. What happens next is going to show you exactly how powerful it can be when invisible generosity becomes undeniably visible. The head waiter, James, approached our table just as we were finishing dessert, carrying a leather presentation folder and moving with the kind of professional discretion that expensive restaurants are known for. I'd specifically requested that he handle the final details personally, knowing that his years of experience would help him navigate what might become an awkward moment gracefully. "Excuse me," James said politely, his voice carrying just enough to be heard over the family conversations. "I apologize for interrupting your celebration." The table quieted as everyone turned their attention to him. James had that authoritative presence that comes from years of managing high-end events, the kind of staff member you trust to handle important occasions perfectly. "Ms. Chen," he continued, looking directly at me, We need your signature on the final arrangements for your family's dinner. Thank you again for choosing the Grand Manor for your special celebration. Everything has been handled according to your specifications, and we hope your family has enjoyed this evening as much as we've enjoyed hosting you." The silence that followed was absolute. 23 people staring at me as their brains processed what James had just revealed. The mysterious benefactor who'd arranged this entire elegant Thanksgiving celebration wasn't some distant family friend or generous stranger. It was Rebecca, the daughter they'd just spent dinner describing as directionless and financially unstable. "Your family's dinner?" Mom repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. James, professionally trained to handle delicate situations, maintained his composure perfectly. "Yes, ma'am. Miss Chen arranged everything. The private dining room, the private traditional menu with your family's specific preferences, the wine pairings, even the fall decorations. She wanted to ensure your Thanksgiving celebration would be memorable." Dad's face had gone completely white. "Rebecca arranged this dinner? She contacted us 3 weeks ago with very detailed instructions about how she wanted the evening to unfold," James continued, oblivious to the family drama he was revealing. "The preliminary payment was $4,200, which covered everything including service charges. Ms. Chen was very specific that she wanted the meal to feel like a gift from an anonymous benefactor until the final moment. $4,200. The amount hung in the air like smoke from an extinguished candle. I could see family members doing quick calculations, realizing the scope and expense of what I'd arranged while they'd been celebrating Marcus as the family's only success story. "Rebecca," Aunt Susan said, her voice filled with something between amazement and confusion, "you did all this?" "I wanted our family to have a beautiful Thanksgiving together," I said simply, signing the leather folder James had placed in front of me. "When Mom mentioned you might have to skip the traditional celebration or scale it back because of expenses, I couldn't let that happen. But where did you get?" Dad started to ask, then stopped, realizing the question revealed his assumptions about my financial capabilities. James, sensing the personal nature of the conversation developing, made a discreet exit after thanking me once more for choosing their restaurant. But the damage to the family's assumptions had been done, thoroughly and publicly. "Rebecca, this dinner cost $4,000, Marcus said, clearly struggling to process this information. "That's more than I make in a month. I know what it cost. But we were told you were struggling financially," Mom said, confusion evident in her voice. "You live in that small apartment. You drive an old car." The table remained silent as they absorbed this revelation. Grandpa Chen, who'd been quietly observing the entire exchange, was the first to speak. "Rebecca, Beta, how long have you been taking care of the family? Like this?" The question I'd been dreading and hoping for simultaneously. "What do you mean?" The anonymous generosity. "This isn't the first time, is it?" I looked around the table at faces filled with curiosity, confusion, and dawning realization. "No, it's not the first time. Mom's hospital bills last year," Aunt Susan said suddenly. "The ones that mysteriously got paid by that charitable foundation. That was you, wasn't it? The contractor who said the work had already been paid for by someone who wanted to remain anonymous." "The new heating system Dad installed last winter," Marcus said, his voice getting quieter as the pieces fell into place. "He said a utility company program covered the entire cost, but that never made sense." I sat there as my family connected dots they'd never thought to examine before, realizing that their struggling daughter had actually been their primary source of financial security for years. "How is this possible?" Dad asked, his earlier confidence completely gone. "Rebecca, what do you actually do for work?" "I run a business consulting firm specializing in efficiency optimization for mid-sized companies. We have contracts with 43 businesses across 6 states. Last year's revenue is $2.80 million. The silence returned, heavier this time. $2.80 million revenue while they'd been worried about my ability to support myself. $2.8 million, Mom repeated numbly. The business has grown significantly over the past 6 years. I started with 3 clients and a laptop in my apartment. Now I have 12 employees and we're expanding into the Southwest region next year." 12 employees, Marcus said, looking at his wine glass instead of me. "I work for someone else's company, and you actually own one. Different paths lead to different destinations," I said gently, echoing the language they'd used to describe my unconventional choices. But why didn't you tell us? Dad asked. Why let us think you were struggling when you were actually successful? Because every time I tried to share business news over the years, it was dismissed or minimized. Every achievement was treated as a lucky break rather than earned success. Eventually, I stopped trying to correct your assumptions. We didn't know, Mom said, tears forming in her eyes. Rebecca, we had no idea you built something so substantial. You didn't know because you didn't ask. When I mentioned client meetings, you assumed they were small scale. When I talked about business growth, you changed the subject to Marcus's career. When I tried to explain what I actually did, you'd make polite noises and move on to topics that interested you more. The conversation continued for another hour as family members asked questions they should have asked years earlier. They wanted to understand how I'd built the business, what services I'd provided, how I'd managed to support them financially while building my own success. But the most important question came from Marcus. Rebecca, I'm sorry about what Dad said earlier. About being the pride of the family. That was wrong, especially considering you've been the one actually taking care of everyone. You didn't know either, Marcus. None of you knew because I chose not to make it obvious. But you've been supporting Mom and Dad financially while they praised my entry-level corporate job and worried about your stability. That's completely backwards. Success looks different for different people. Your job provides structure and benefits that work for your goals. My business provides flexibility and income that work for mine. Both are valid, but only one was being celebrated. 3 months later, my business was featured in Forbes as one of the top 50 consulting firms founded by women under 35. The article mentioned my company's rapid growth and innovative approach to efficiency consulting, including a sidebar about my philosophy of quiet success, building and substantial achievement without requiring external validation or recognition. Dad called me the day the article came out. Rebecca, I saw the Forbes article. I'm proud of what you've accomplished, and I'm ashamed of how we've treated your success. Thank you, Dad. Can I ask you something? At Thanksgiving, when you arranged that whole dinner and let us praise Marcus while ignoring you, why didn't you speak up? Why didn't you tell us right then that you were the one paying for everything? I thought about his question. Because I wanted you to discover it naturally. I wanted the waiter to reveal it when you weren't expecting it, so you could see the contrast between your assumptions and reality. The contrast between calling Marcus the pride of the family while the actual family provider sat there unacknowledged. Something like that. It was a powerful lesson. Painful, but necessary. The relationship between my parents and me changed fundamentally after that Thanksgiving dinner. They started asking about my business with genuine interest, celebrating my achievements with the same enthusiasm they'd always shown for Marcus's, and treating my success as legitimate, rather than surprising. But more importantly, they stopped accepting anonymous help without questioning its source. When I arranged for their mortgage to be mysteriously paid off 6 months later, Mom called me immediately. Rebecca, this was you, wasn't it? What makes you think that? Because we've learned to recognize your generosity patterns. Anonymous benefactor, professional handling, perfect timing when we need help, but haven't asked for it. You've gotten good at reading the signs. We've gotten good at seeing you clearly. Something we should have done years ago. The Thanksgiving celebration that revealed my secret became a turning point for our entire family dynamic. Marcus and I developed a more honest relationship, based on mutual respect, rather than the old pattern of him being celebrated while I was overlooked. My extended family started treating my career achievements with appropriate recognition, and my parents learned to see success in forms they hadn't previously recognized or valued. The waiter who spoke my name at that dinner didn't just reveal who had paid for the meal, he revealed who had been quietly holding the family together financially, while being dismissed as the one who couldn't get her life together. Sometimes the most powerful way to change people's perceptions is to let them experience the contrast between their assumptions and reality in the most public, undeniable way possible. And sometimes that means sitting quietly through toasts celebrating someone else's achievements, while knowing you're the one who made the celebration possible. The daughter they called still searching for direction had actually found her direction years earlier and had been using it to provide for them ever since. The family member they worried about financially had been their primary source of financial security. And the person they overlooked in favor of praising someone else's potential had been quietly achieving more than any of them had imagined possible. That Thanksgiving dinner cost me $4,200, But it bought something much more valuable: my family's recognition of who I actually was rather than who they assumed I was. And when the waiter said my name, revealing that their disappointment daughter was actually their secret benefactor, it changed our family's understanding of success, achievement, and which child had really been the pride of the family alley. All along. What hidden support have you provided to family who didn't recognize your success? What achievements have you built while being overlooked? Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever been the family member quietly holding everyone together while someone else got the credit, you're not alone. Comment quiet success if you believe in building achievement without needing constant recognition. Share this story with someone who needs to know that being underestimated while secretly succeeding can lead to the most powerful revelations. Subscribe and hit the notification bell for more stories about family dynamics, hidden generosity, and the moment when invisible support becomes undeniably visible. I'd love to know, should families recognize all their members' achievements equally, or is it too natural for some to stand out more than others? Let me know in the comments. Remember, your success doesn't require their acknowledgement to be real, but their acknowledgement can transform relationships in ways you never expected.